Alright guys, CHOKKR here, and I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. A huge set of CDL matches to start out the weekend, two absolute bangers to start the day as well. But OpTic takes us yet again in the headlines. The loss to Vegas Legion was written off in a certain way. The loss to Minnesota Rokkr showed there were problems, and that is categorically true after the result that we have seen today. Huge talking points coming out of this one. Big implications of what we are going to see from now to the end of the season, and potentially beyond as well. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. We're not wasting any time today apart from this tweet just real quick. We are diving straight into this first series because wow, Subliners versus Rokkr was an absolute roller coaster. We know that accuracy has taken some time away from the team, of course. Spart comes in. We know that Spart is known to be a good substitute because let's not forget what happened with the Los Angeles Gorillas. He subbed in for the major when Gunless wasn't able to play because, I think, did he have a stomach ulcer? What exactly was it? Anyway, Gunless had to take a step out. He had to have some surgery. Thankfully, he was okay. Spart stepped in for that tourney, used the Volk, and they won it, right, famously in Minnesota. Major 2 back in Vanguard. Now, playing for Minnesota with Gunless, Sparta's there alongside Gunless, and there were questions, right, sure, accuracy stepping away is going to hurt them in certain elements, but also, it's not like accuracy individually was performing especially well as of late. Spart came in, did a pretty solid job today, but game one, I mean, I could not believe my eyes. This is one of the worst losses in competitive Call of Duty history. In the CDL era, I believe it's the third worst. We've, of course, had the famous Toronto versus 100 Thieves 250-14 on Raid Hardpoint back in Cold War. I forget what the other one is that's between that and this, but this I think was the third worst ever, and it was bad. I mean, they finally got some points on the board, down 126-0, and then before you know it, Subliners have won every single rotation, and the game is ending 250-38. Standy had 3 kills, 3 seconds in Hill, 3 kills. Difficult to imagine really how a team could possibly perform as poorly as that in game one. Gunless, this was his face. I mean, he did the face the other day when accuracy got spun on against Miami on the Karachi. This was Gunless' face after getting 40-point clubbed game one, and it is the 5th time in the CDL history that a team has scored less than 50 in hardpoints, and it is the 3rd worst loss ever in the history, or the 3rd, lowest overall points in the history of the CDL. So, incredible stuff. I will say, though, that 3-17 for Standy will go down in the memory, but it's still not quite 4-23. By the KD, 3-17 is actually slightly better than 4-23. He would need to have been 3-18 to break the KD record of Zuma from, of course, way back in the day at this point. But yeah, Zuma still holds the crown on that one. But I had a weird feeling after game one, because I feel like I've seen this before. Sometimes teams get slapped around in the first hardpoint bad, and then they just decide, you know what, we might not be great. Let's just see what we got in the tank in the search and destroy. The other team thinks, oh, it's going to be a clean 3-0, and all of a sudden Rokkr played well in this search and destroy. They'd clearly prepared. Spark comes through, obviously good substitute player that he is, and all of a sudden they win the game too. So the series is tied. It doesn't really matter how you get the job done. You can get 40-point clubs game one, no problem. It's still only one map win. It's the same as a 250-249. Rokkr bring it back. They win the game too. And then they win the game 3 on the Karachi control, which I was kind of in disbelief given the fact that they'd just been smoked game 1 and all of a sudden they're up 2-1 in the series. They do, however, lose the next hardpoint, the final hardpoint in the series. And then it went to a round 11, and this was just embarrassing by the Minnesota Rokkr. Honestly, this was mad entertaining, but I really couldn't believe my eyes here. So we go into a round 11. First of all, right, Rokkr up 4-1 in this game. So it was a 4-1 lead. They brought it back to 5-5. So, you know, they'd bottled the big advantage. Gunless was on 0-7 for a while, then he got a couple of kills. Here's the round 11. Spart gets blooded. They then get the trade back. Then the decision has to be made here for the Minnesota Rokkr. What are you going to do? Are you going to take your time? Are you going to go for it? Stanley goes forward. Sib's in the corner in a tough spot. He goes down to Lins. So 3 versus 3 on the clock at this point. Rokkr have to make a call. I don't hate what they do. They take their time. They bide it out. They try and wait for a flank. They fake going back. Then they commit back to A. Committing back to A is okay. I don't really have a massive problem with this play because they did bait HyDra over to the B bomb site. So they effectively have a 3 versus 2 here at the A site. The thing is, they're not prepared for Kismet in this corner. I don't know where Stanley's going here. I know people criticise Lins for his play in the 1 versus 1. I kind of get that, but Stanley has the bomb. Okay, they don't have control of mid, which is a bit of a problem, but realistically, you've got to get the rock down. just plant the bomb. How hard can it be? Stanley just decides to jump up here and chow. He gets shot by the guy at the back, and then Kismet laying down just gets a free kill on him. Like, he had the bomb. Did he not know he had the bomb? I don't know. That was just a woeful play. And all of a sudden, they're just screwed now because the bomb's down. HyDra gets one for mid. Lins gets one, by the way. Gets the second here. He hits 1 pumps, 2 pumps, and gets away with it. Then there's 6.4 on the clock. It's tough to really criticize Lins here because it was Stanley's error that got them to this point. But Lins could have planted the bomb. There was time to get the bomb down. He picks the bomb up right here with 5.6 seconds on the clock. He can press square and plant the bomb right now. Skyz, I don't believe, checks this either. But by the time Lins probably realizes in his head that he can plant, and also I think for Lins, it is the only play to do because you've got 30 health, you're one shot. In those moments, the only thing to do is to try and plant because you're not really going to win the gunfight if you take it. And if he checks it, whatever. So you've got a plant there, but it's not his fault because he shouldn't have been in a 1v3 in the first place. And I don't really blame him for this play. He eventually tries to go for the chal. He does regen, but Skyz just slips the net, as you guys could tell there. As Lins goes to chal this, Skyz just gets around the corner. If he went to plant, he would have got it down there, I'm pretty sure. And yeah, so eventually Subliners take the round 11, and what an absolute mess. I mean, it's just such a massive 10 points on the board, right? Every 10 is mega at this point. And I know that technically the major will determine which teams qualify, but you also got to understand getting top 4 at the major maybe is more doable now given the performances of teams like Subliners and teams like OpTic lately. But realistically, over the last few events, the best you can place if you're a Rokkr, a Ravens, or whatever, a Surge, is, top 6. Historically, that's been true. That's only 30 points. So 10 is just so big, and Rokkr losing today is a real big blow, given the opportunity they had to their World Championship ambitions. But, at the end of the day, they've got a substitute in. I'm not really expecting them to do that much damage in terms of the World Championship run. I don't know if accuracy is going to be able to get back in. There's been some talk on that over the last couple of days. It's a fair play to Spart. Subliners get the win, but it was sketchy. A team that doesn't get the win, though, is OpTic Texas, and we've got to talk about this. Going into the day, JP had said on stream the other day that Dashy was so annoyed about the loss to Rokkr that he decided to hit the gym, right? And apparently he just went in there and did the, the classic newbie gym guy thing, which is just to lift as heavy as you can and then realize that your muscles can't take it and just be completely wiped out for the next few days rather than progressive overload. But whatever. Dashy, as he says here, or JP says, he went to the gym and was slugging around weights. He doesn't even go to the gym. He was still sore several days later. And maybe Dashy's going to be back in the gym tonight because this was not pretty. So we've talked about these two respective teams. I thought this series could be close. I talked about it being a potential Game 5 this morning. But I thought that OpTic, after having the Vegas loss, which they wrote off as like kind of cheese, right? And okay, whatever. The Rokkr loss was bad, and clearly the week of practice leading up to the Rokkr loss was not exactly great because, had they improved much from Vegas? No. But I thought this week, all right, they'll have settled down after the Rokkr series, that have got themselves together, back in the right mindset, and hit it hard. But I still thought Ravens, they get that kind of not qualified for the World Championship buff that we have seen. And to be honest, they're a pretty damn good team. I mean, especially playing together. Ravens, I think, are better than their placement suggests, and better, I would say, than the amount of points they have in the CDL this season. They've just lost several moments that they probably shouldn't have in hindsight, but there still shouldn't be on paper a real good match for the champions at Major 3, but they bring back the Game 1, they win it. This was a funny moment here where Felony, I'm guessing his controller disconnected, but literally while soaking hill time, he has to reconnect his controller, and then he chals the guys, and they still win the Game 1. So Ravens go up 1-0. And it's the search and destroy, though. Mainly it's been the search and destroy that's been the real big downfall for OpTic Texas over the last couple of weeks. I don't know what's happened to them in that mode, but they got embarrassed in the high-rise, right? And this is what we were talking about at the major. OpTic have not been a great high-rise search and destroy team, but going into the major, and certainly during the major, they'd fixed it, right? They looked better in this mode. They beat, FaZe on this map, right? They beat the teams they needed to beat on this map at the major. But that was one of the questions coming out of the major. Was that just a Championship Sunday masterclass? Could OpTic replicate this performance? And they come in here against Ravens and get completely embarrassed. Like, no teamwork, no trades. That's the classic thing with OpTic. When things are going wrong, It's just the trades disappear. Like, they've clearly still got the talent, but the teamwork is not there. And also the comms today for OpTic, I think that was a big one. Listening to their comms in the game 4, I was just thinking, I was listening to it thinking, wow, this doesn't sound like the same OpTic team that we saw at the major. You know, Kenny was getting frustrated and getting joked. We know that Kenny doesn't like online cards, but the reality is that it kind of matters because at least you want to start in the winners bracket, and it's big for confidence, right? If you feel like you've fallen off, if you're second guessing your practice and all these things, it's not good for the team, and it's not the first time we've seen this in an OpTic roster, but they go up 2-0 in the series. Ravens do. Clay's obviously pretty hyped about it. But all of a sudden, things start to go the other way. This is, of course, the classic Ravens, right? I mean, they got up 2-0, and yeah, things start to go the other way. Pred has a nice 4-piece round 1. Even this, though, like, this map here, the high-rise control, was a map where Ravens were shocking at the start of the season. They were like a guaranteed dub on this game, and Clayster is, you know, I love Clay. I think he's a phenomenal player and personality, but by the numbers, he may be one of the worst control players in the history of the league. Like, you know, respectfully, his KD isn't great in the mode, and his teams have historically been pretty shocking at control. So, you know, maybe that's unfair, but I think the numbers would possibly back me up on that in terms of results and maybe KD. So anyway, Claire's a bit of a stinker here, basically, and OpTic eventually go round 5 and they win it. So they go game 4, and OpTic win that one as well. This was a big moment actually here where Ravens are up 2-1. Shotzzy fell off the map as well in this clip here. Shotzzy fell off and Ravens won the round, but eventually OpTic did enough to take it to 5. They got the defense, they closed it out, even with Dashy falling off the map here. This kind of summed up the series in some respects for OpTic, that even when things were going well, Dashy just somehow falls off the map here on the high rise. So it really was an absolute disaster class. But at the same time, Shotzzy is still killing it, right? And this guy, especially online, has been immense for OpTic as of late. He, I think, broke another record this series of being maybe the first player to have multiple triple 30 bombs. So to drop a 30 bomb in the first and the fourth hardpoint and in the control. And Shotzzy's done that again today, and he's one of the only other players to have done that once before. This was a very competitive game on the Rio hardpoint that OpTic will feel like they should have won, but Fellow made a big play. Then Ravens have the rotation to P2. Fellow gets a streak on the boards, but Fellow doesn't call in the streak, and this is a big question as to why not, because I think if you are Ravens, you probably had to commit to trying to win it then and there. He didn't decide to call in the streak. Clayster gets spun on 180 by Dashy. They go game 5, and Clay at the time was like, oh my god, there is no way that we just threw that and we're going to a Karachi search. But Ravens said after the series, they were well prepared for the Karachi search and destroy. They'd done their research on OpTic, they felt like they were in a good position, and that's exactly what they delivered. This was a big one from Clay. Like, so what you want about Clay, didn't have the best series up until this point, but in effectively a 1 versus 3 scenario, gets to 1v1 against Dashy, his old foe, the big drama between those two back at the start of Cold War. He gets the 1v1 win. Clay throws up the hands again, and that was one of the critical moments. They nearly bottle it again, of course, because it's Ravens. Like, they're always going to try, aren't they, to make the Game 5 interesting for their fans. But in the end, it was this moment, the felony nade. I'm pretty sure OpTic forgot to throw down the trophy, or they missed the trophy, or they were a bit late with the trophy, and Fellow's double nade onto Shotzzy and Pred secures the dub. So what has happened to this OpTic team? I'm sure there's going to be discussion. Yes, it's online, but you cannot pretend they are playing the same level of COD that they were before. They're now on a 3 losing streak since for the first time in 2 years. You know, there's no doubt in my mind that having won the major, the foot has come off the gas to some extent. And, well, the difficulty is, can you put it back down on the gas ASAP and turn the nitrous on? Because they might well need to. The problem is, for OpTic, is that they play Subliners on Sunday. That's never going to be easy. They play Boston, okay. Then they play Toronto, and I'm pretty sure to make winners, at least guaranteed, given the map count and stuff, they will need to beat Boston for sure, and I'm pretty certain beat either one of New York or Toronto. So there is a realistic world here where OpTic start in the losers bracket. The only team they've beaten is Miami with Purge as a substitute, so it really isn't great at all. For Ravens, though, it's so massive. You know, they've made all those game 5s. They've now won a couple of them. Another 10 points on the board is just so big for their ambitions. this is what Dashy has to say. Lots to talk about, I'm sure, over the coming days here, but a big result for OpTic in terms of how their season is going, whether they can get this back on track. These were the overall numbers for the series here as well. Shotzzy, 111 kills. I believe the only player that's now dropped 110 plus on 2 occasions. And it ain't enough, right? 20,000 plus damage, 1.14 KD, loads of engagements, not good enough to take down the Ravens on the other side. But just quickly before we close out the video, a record-breaking series here between FaZe and Boston as Boston officially become the first of a CDL team to lose 14, I repeat, 14 series in a row. Ever since they dropped CHOKKR and I guess the Seam as well at the time, they have only got worse. They lose the game 1, they lose the game 2, they lose the game 3. I'm not even going to talk about it any more than that. All I'm going to say is this is some legendary performances here from the Boston Breach. FaZe will always handle business in series like this, but wow, this team and organisation is absolutely tragic. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.